I'm taking all his inheritance.
My son, John, was rushed to the hospital after an accident, but he didn't make it. Even though Jessica, John's wife, knew he had been taken to the hospital, she never showed up. However, the moment she found out that John had passed away, she suddenly appeared before us and said something shocking. Hearing Jessica's words, I couldn't help but smirk inwardly.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Jessica's mother, Catherine, said mockingly with a laugh, but I knew she would be stunned when the truth came out. You won't be laughing for long. My name is Betty. I turned 65 this year, retired, and now I'm living off my savings. My husband, Bob, started his own company and made it a success. I've been supporting Bob behind the scenes, but lately he's been feeling under the weather and hasn't had much energy.
I don't think I have much time left,
Bob said, which wasn't something I wanted to hear. I can't imagine life without Bob. But I've been worried that one day the time might come when we have to say goodbye. Bob is a kind soul who listens to me with a smile on his face. Being with someone as gentle as Bob has always brought me peace of mind. That's just how important Bob is to me. After I married Bob, we had one son. We thought about having more children, but after giving birth to our first son, John, we weren't blessed with any more. Bob and I poured all our love into John. Since it was our first time raising a child, I think we might have spoiled him a bit, but John grew up just fine. Not long after he graduated from college and started his job, John got married. He moved out of our house after that, but following Bob's suggestion, he built a house close to ours. Bob probably wanted him nearby so we could help each other if anything ever happened. However, there was one problem. That problem was John's wife, Jessica. Jessica has a bit of an odd personality. It seemed Bob didn't notice how difficult Jessica could be. The first time we met her, I was shocked by how arrogant she was. I couldn't believe she didn't think to be more polite when meeting her future in-laws. I found it strange, but I brushed it off, thinking it was just her personality. But then Jessica started criticizing the layout and design of the house Bob was planning to build for John. To meet her demands, it would cost quite a bit more. Jessica told us that we should pay the extra cost as part of a wedding gift. In other words, Jessica is a bold and shameless woman. I still remember Bob being speechless at that moment. In the end, we went ahead with the renovations to make the house the way Jessica wanted. Of course, Bob paid for it, and Jessica looked quite satisfied. Because of the unexpected interior work, John and Jessica couldn't move in as planned. I thought they could just stay at our houses until the renovations were done, but Jessica didn't like that idea and said she preferred living in a hotel. Staying in a hotel every day is expensive. Even so, Jessica ignored our advice and started living in a hotel. They stayed in a hotel for about 2 weeks, all at Jessica's request, and in the end, she sent us the bill. I thought it was for John's sake, but I couldn't help feeling frustrated.
I'm fine staying at your house, but Jessica doesn't want to. I'd rather not spend all that money on a hotel.
Apparently, John was against the idea of hotel living. Even so, Jessica overruled John's objections. I started to worry whether their marriage would work out in the long run. Jessica had been working in an office before marrying John, but after they got married, she quit her jobs to become a stay-at-home wife. When we told Jessica that the renovations were finally finished, she didn't even try to hide her displeasure. It's their home, so shouldn't she be happy? Why does she look so upset? While I was wondering, Jessica blurted out something surprising.
I wish we could just stay at the hotel forever. No cleaning, no cooking. It's so much easier. I'll have to start doing everything myself now.
She must have thought I didn't hear her, but I caught her muttering under her breath. I'm sure hotel living had been very comfortable for her. But still, you'd think she could at least show some appreciation for the house Bob built out of kindness. I guess Jessica just couldn't stand the thought of giving up her easy life. Hotels are convenient, sure, but a brand new house will give you the freedom to enjoy things on your own terms. I casually said something to Jessica, but she just sighed. After seeing her attitude, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease about our future relationship with Jessica. I also began to worry whether she and John would really make it as a couple. But since John's house is close to ours, I figured we could always step in if needed, so I didn't dwell on it too much. Finally, John and Jessica were ready to move into their new house, and we helped with the moving process. However, Jessica didn't lift a finger, saying she didn't want to ruin her nails, and just sat there watching as we worked.
Hurry up, will you? My show starts in an hour, so make sure you're done by then.
Jessica kept criticizing our work while playing a game on her phone. Bob, who's usually pretty calm, looked a bit annoyed, and I didn't miss it. John, on the other hand, just did what she wanted without complaining and focused on the task. As much as I wanted to say something about Jessica's terrible attitude, I decided to bite my tongue, figuring that once the move was done, we wouldn't have to deal with her much. After that, even though John and Jessica lived close by, we didn't see much of them. We didn't go out of our way to visit them, and they never came to our house either. I thought that since we lived nearby, we would visit each other from time to time. However, after the move, there was no family interaction at all. Bob had arranged for John to live nearby, so the lack of interaction felt sad. I knew Bob probably felt even more disappointed than I did, so I encouraged John to stop by the house from time to time.
I'd like to, but Jessica, she doesn't really want to come over, and I don't feel right about forcing her.
John, looking uncomfortable, conveyed Jessica's feelings to us. If she didn't want to visit, there wasn't much we could do, but I still hoped they'd drop by every once in a while, especially during the holidays. A little while later, as Thanksgiving was approaching, I was in the middle of preparing the meal. I thought I'd get extra food ready in case John and Jessica came over, so I called John. But he didn't pick up, probably because he was at work. Reluctantly, I called Jessica, but her attitude was absolutely terrible.
Hi, what do you want?
It's been a while. How have you been? With Thanksgiving coming up, I thought maybe you two could join us for dinner, so I wanted to reach out. If you don't have any plans, how about it? I'll make sure to prepare food for both of you. Even though Jessica's tone irritated me from the first word, I tried to keep calm. However, her responses were nothing but rude.
Why would we spend Thanksgiving at an old folks' houses? Don't say things like that. It's bad luck. We already have plans and we're busy. There's no way we're coming to your house.
Jessica treated us like old people and even laughed at us. If I was going to get treated like this, I shouldn't have called in the first place. I regretted reaching out to her. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be so thoughtless. Of course, you're young and have plans. Just forget I mentioned it.
Well, I guess we could drop by for a bit. Are you going to give us spending money or something? If you give us some cash, I suppose we could come over for a little while.
Money? What is she even talking about? Is she saying they'd only come if they got money? I already didn't have a great impression of Jessica, but this solidified how unreasonable she was. It's not that I'm against giving them money. However, knowing they would only come for the money made me lose the desire to have them over. So, I decided not to invite them and chose to spend a quiet Thanksgiving with just Bob. Thanksgiving Day finally arrived, and I was busy preparing the meal. Then, suddenly, Bob had a seizure and collapsed. Thanksgiving was the last thing on my mind as I rushed to the hospital with him in an ambulance. Bob didn't wake up for a long time. Even after several days, he didn't recover, and eventually, he passed away. The suddenness of it all left me in total darkness. I had no time to worry about Jessica anymore. I never imagined that Bob would leave us at that moment, and I was devastated by the grief of losing him. I contacted John to let him know about Bob. He came to the hospital right away and broke down in tears when he saw Bob. John seemed unable to accept the fact that he hadn't been there for Bob's final moments. I had called John once when we first went to the hospital, but he said he couldn't come because Jessica wanted to go shopping. Reluctantly, John went shopping with her, though he couldn't stop worrying. He hadn't expected Bob to pass away, and he was even more distraught than I was. I regretted not insisting that John come to the hospital immediately. Bob had arranged for his assets to go to John, so I had to deal with all the legal processes, which left me little time to grieve. After some time, all the paperwork regarding Bob's estate was completed, and I felt a sense of relief. John took over Bob's company. It seems John has a natural talent for business because the company grew rapidly, and within about 3 years, it had amassed a fortune of $10 million. However, on his way home from work, John was killed in a head-on collision with an oncoming car. The other driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. I couldn't accept the reality of it. I cried so much that I wondered how it was even possible for someone to shed so many tears. Losing Bob had been heartbreaking, but I knew eventually that time would come. But the thought of John passing away before me was something I had never expected. When I found out John had been taken to the hospital, I rushed there immediately, but Jessica was nowhere to be found. I tried calling her, but all I got was her voicemail. While I couldn't reach her, John passed away. Even though she had treated me and Bob poorly, I thought Jessica at least cared about John, so I was shocked she hadn't come to the hospital. Surely Jessica must have known about John's condition. A few days later, as I was preparing for John's funeral, Jessica suddenly showed up with her mother, Catherine. "Where were you? You're his wife. You should have been by John's side." I was so upset that my words came out in a jumble. But Jessica just gave a defiant smile.
I'm taking all his inheritance.
Those were the words Jessica bluntly said the moment she saw my face. John is gone, and yet she doesn't seem sad at all. Not only that, but his funeral hasn't even happened, and she's already talking about the inheritance. But honestly, it wasn't all that surprising.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Catherine said it with a smirk on her face. You won't be laughing for long.
What are you talking about? Maybe losing John made you lose your mind.
I ignored her and continued with his funeral preparations. No matter what Jessica said, it didn't matter to me anymore. Jessica was no longer family. John's funeral went smoothly. Though I was still sad, I knew I couldn't let myself stay down forever. This was just the beginning of my payback against Jessica, who had treated me so horribly. Before John passed, he had come to me with a concern about Jessica just once. He suspected that Jessica might be having an affair. For John's sake, I hired a private investigator to look into her. That's how we discovered Jessica's infidelity. Even though she was a stay-at-home wife, while John was at work, she was regularly meeting other men. Not just one, but multiple men she had become romantically involved with. Until we found out about her affairs, if anything had happened to John, Jessica would have inherited everything. But after learning about the affairs, John changed the beneficiary to me. Jessica still believes that she is the beneficiary. That's probably why she boldly declared that she would be taking the inheritance from me. John had even considered divorce, but worried that she would take half of his assets. That's why he decided not to divorce her and left the money in his own accounts, saying he would wait and see for a while, right before this tragedy happened. Thinking about how John must have felt made me feel helpless. At the same time, I was determined not to let Jessica get away with it. The day after the funeral, Jessica called me non-stop. She had probably found out she wasn't going to inherit anything. I didn't need to hear her to know what she was thinking, so I ignored her calls, no matter how many came in. I had nothing to say to Jessica. Even after a few days, the calls from Jessica didn't stop. Since John's assets amounted to $10 million, I could understand why she couldn't just stay silent. If she had been a wife who truly cared for John, this wouldn't have happened. But Jessica was selfish and never cared about her family, and now it was coming back to haunt her. I successfully inherited John's estate and completed all the necessary paperwork. At that point, I decided to call Jessica. Well, more like, I decided to finally pick up the phone the next time she called, since she hadn't stopped trying to reach me. A few minutes later, as expected, Jessica called again, so I answered.
You finally picked up. Why have you been ignoring me? Do you know how many times I've called?
And why have you been calling so much? You never answer when I call, so I don't think you have the right to complain. I couldn't help but make a sarcastic remark, but honestly, it was how I truly felt. Jessica only ever reached out when she needed something. Whenever I needed to reach her, she usually didn't answer.
What do you mean I don't get his inheritance? You must have done something shady. Just because you don't like me, you took it all. You're so awful. That's why I can't stand you. I'm the beneficiary, so make sure I get what's mine. If not, I'll sue you.
This was all John's decision. I'm just respecting his wishes. If you want to sue me, go ahead. I hadn't done anything shady, so even if she sued me, it wouldn't be a problem. I figured she could do whatever she wanted. John, just to be safe, had entrusted me with everything related to his finances, including the bank accounts. It was to prevent Jessica from doing whatever she wanted with them. For a while after that, I didn't hear from Jessica, and she didn't come by the house either. Just when I thought she had finally given up, I was looking at my phone, and Jessica called. My hand accidentally touched the screen, and I ended up answering the call.
This is all your fault. I'm drowning in debt now. You need to take responsibility. You inherited $10 million, so you could help me out a little.
Jessica suddenly started yelling at me, though I could already guess the reason without her explaining. According to the investigator, Jessica had been involved with a married man. That's why John reached out to the wife of her affair partner and sent her the evidence photos. While I expected the woman to be angry with John, she was actually grateful to him and said she planned to divorce her husband, who was Jessica's affair partner. On top of that, she planned to sue both Jessica and her husband for damages. Jessica's debt likely came from paying those damages.
I was just having some fun, not cheating. But now I've got 3 people coming after me for damages. You're the one who told the wives, right? She said she heard it from someone, and it had to be you. You're the only one who would do something so outrageous.
3 people? What does she mean by that? I was confused by Jessica's words. As far as I knew, she'd only been involved with one man. From what she was saying, it seemed like there was more than one married man she had been seeing. I understood that being sued by 3 people must be a tough situation. But I had no obligation to help her. Why is she asking for help now? I have no idea. Did you do something to deserve being sued for damages?
I didn't say that. They probably just misunderstood, thinking I was doing something more than just having fun. There's no way I would cheat. It's all your fault that it got out.
When you say it got out, you mean your affair, right? John figured it out. I can understand why you're angry at me, but it's your affair that's the problem here. Do you understand why John didn't leave you the inheritance?
No way. I wasn't cheating. I was just having some fun. I can't believe I lost $10 million because of that. Do you think it's funny that I lost it all? Why didn't you stand up for me?
Why on earth would I defend Jessica? She hurt John deeply. There's no way I would ever take her side. How can she be so oblivious? Why should I defend you? You treated me and Bob terribly and betrayed John. There's no reason for me to help you.
I'm your daughter-in-law. You should be trying to keep the family together. Can you really call yourself a parent?
Everything Jessica had said and done so far made it clear she didn't see me as a parent. How convenient that she's only calling me family when it suits her. I can't keep up with her nonsense anymore. We're not family anymore, so stop relying on me. Nothing good comes from being involved with you any longer. I'm not giving you a single penny, so stop contacting me. I hung up the phone, wondering if I had gone too far. It wasn't my intention to be mean to Jessica. Originally, since she had married John, I wanted to treat her like my own daughter. But Jessica herself had made that impossible. It wasn't right for her to blame me. Even after that, Jessica kept calling, but I ignored every single call. There was no point in talking to her anymore. A few days later, while I was doing the dishes, the doorbell rang. Since I wasn't expecting any deliveries, I felt uneasy about who might be at the door. Given the timing, I had a bad feeling that it might be Jessica. As I cautiously approached the door, I heard what sounded like Jessica's voice and tried to quietly return to the other room.
I know you're in there. There's no point in pretending you're not. Give me my money back. That's my money, you thief.
What's the big idea? Taking Jessica's money. Get out here right now.
I quietly returned to my room after hearing those words. Jessica had brought her mother, Catherine, with her. I immediately called the police. Jessica is no longer family, and having her show up at my house was nothing but a nuisance. I stayed inside, waiting for the police to arrive without stepping outside. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise coming from the entrance. It sounded like something had broken. Did they break the potted plant Bob cherished? Even though I thought that, I wasn't sure what they might do if I stepped outside, so I stayed put, hoping the police would arrive soon. After about 10 minutes, the police finally arrived, and I spoke to them through the intercom. They asked me to come outside, and when I did, I saw Jessica being restrained by the officers. The police wanted to hear what had happened, so I invited them inside to explain everything. As I recounted the events with Jessica, I felt a wave of emptiness wash over me. If only I had convinced John when I first realized Jessica's true nature, maybe he wouldn't have suffered through her infidelity and died with that pain. Even though I knew there was nothing I could do now, I couldn't stop my emotions from overwhelming me.
Take your time.
When I was at a loss for words, the police officer kindly offered some reassuring words. I took a deep breath, gathered myself, and finished telling them everything.
If anything else happens, don't hesitate to call us.
After listening to everything, the police officer said that and started to leave. When I walked them to the door, I noticed Bob's potted plant and some decorations near the entrance had been broken. When I told the police that it was likely Jessica and Catherine's doing, they said they would investigate. Luckily, I had a security camera at the front door, so I handed over the footage to the officers. I never thought the camera would come in handy like this, but I was relieved that I had installed it. I didn't care if they tried to hurt me, but breaking the plant that Bob cherished was unforgivable. It was just a potted plant, but to me, it held precious memories. My anger toward Jessica only grew stronger. While I was speaking with the officers inside, Jessica and Catherine had been taken into custody.
That woman ruined my life. She needs to pay for this.
She's the worst for destroying Jessica's life.
Apparently, they had been yelling as they were taken away. The officers, unsure of the situation, but sensing it wasn't normal, decided to take them in. They were also concerned about the broken plant at the entrance and felt it wasn't safe for me to stay alone with them outside the house. Jessica and Catherine were later interrogated by the police. Although she denied it, the security camera footage was decisive, and Jessica was charged with property damage. It seems she won't be able to get out for a while. Catherine, who was just there with her, wasn't charged with any crimes. Jessica not only failed to take care of her own family, but she also destroyed other people's families. On top of that, she even damaged things in my garden. I was relieved when I heard that she would be held accountable because someone like her shouldn't get away with that. According to the police officer, Jessica had been involved with 3 married men and was being sued for damages by all 3 of their wives, which left her in debt and emotionally unstable. But if she were truly mentally unstable, she wouldn't be able to explain herself like that. I silently listened to the officer's explanation, thinking about this. In the end, Jessica's claims were dismissed, and she was charged. I likely won't be seeing her for quite some time. And honestly, I have no desire to deal with Jessica again in the future. As for Catherine, she had been counting on John's inheritance and had already bought a new car and started the process of purchasing a house. However, once she realized there was no inheritance coming her way, she was left to pay the loans with her own income. Since Catherine is divorced and has no one to rely on, she's working desperately to repay those loans. Over the past few years, I've lost 2 people who were important to me. It was a sad situation, but I couldn't let myself stay down forever. I had no choice but to keep moving forward. Originally, the company Bob started had been taken over by John, but after his unexpected accident, there was no one left to continue running it. That's when I thought of the executive Bob trusted. He had joined the company when Bob first started it, and I think he was a bit older than John.
If John doesn't take over the company, I'll probably leave it to him.
That's something Bob himself had said. Following Bob's wishes, I decided to pass the company on to the executive. He was quite surprised, but when I told him that the company wouldn't survive without his leadership, he agreed to take it on. He said he wanted to work hard for Bob's sake, which gave me the confidence to hand over the company. As for me, I've inherited John's estate and am living a financially comfortable life. That doesn't mean I'm living extravagantly, though. Since it's the money John left behind, I intend to use it wisely. However, I'm not confident I could ever spend such a large sum like $10 million, so I'll need to think carefully about how to manage it going forward. For now, I plan to take things slow for a while,